Hello. My name is Christopher Schammer, and this PowerPoint is on fig wasp symbiosis. So the wasp and the figs practice obligate mutualism, where one organism cannot survive without the other. And in the wasp case, they rely on the fig as a reproductive center for their young. And for the figs, they rely on the wasp for the nourishment that the females bring when they're bringing their young to lay inside of the fig. And over millions of years, the wasps and the figs have adapted to each other and developed hand in hand, basically. We also have to ask ourselves the question, what exactly is a fig? And before we go into this any further, the figs we're talking about are not the figs we see at the grocery store or something like that. These are smaller figs that are found in the rainforests of Central and South America. And a fig is not actually a fruit, it's an inflorescence, and it's a cluster of many flowers and seeds contained inside a bulbous stem. And the seeds, which are technically the ovaries of the fig, require special pollination from the wasp, and they're the only animal that can navigate into the inside of the fig to be able to pollinate the fig to make it bloom. We'll get into this later, but I just wanted to show the fig anatomy before we did. And this is what the wasp pollinates. And so for the female, when they're out and about looking to get inside a fig, they have to burrow through the ostiole, which in this case you can see how thick it really is. And these wasps are not very big. And so when they're burrowing through, they, in general, they lose their wings trying to get in to lay their young. And once they're in there, and they lay their young, this is where they will die actually. So once they're in, they're never coming back out. And you can see the male part of the flowers when the females are leaving. These are this is the pollen that the females are taking with them. And you can see how thick the sidewalls of this fig is as well. And this is the part that the male burrows out of to show the female or to help the female get out and find another fig. The role of the male wasp is pretty simple. He comes out of his gall first, so he's mature first, and he's almost blind and he's wingless. And he emerges from his gall, and then he mates with the female that's still in her gall. And the male gives the female everything that she needs to be able to reproduce when she reaches maturity. And after the female emerges from her gall, the fruit ripens and she collects the pollen for her journey, which we talked about in the last slide. And the only other thing the male does other than reproduce with the female is he digs a tunnel to the outside of the fig for the female to be able to escape to go pollinate another fig. So in summary, the male's entire lifespan consists of reproducing with the female and digging her a tunnel so she can leave. And then the male dies inside the fig. He never leaves. That's where he is for his entire life. And once he dies, the fig absorbs him for nutrients and helps the fig grow some more. So when the female is out and about and looking for a fig to be able to lay her young in, the figs that are ready actually produce a scent which the wasp can detect. And as we said before, the only way for the females to get into the fig is through the ostiole, which is at the top of the fig. And it's a super tiny passage that they have to burrow into. And this video here, the video in this slide will actually show where the wasp has lost its wings trying to get in. And once she's in, like we said before, she's going to lay her eggs and then she's going to die. And so that's her whole life cycle as well. As after she leaves the fig that she was born in, she just goes, finds another fig and lays her young, and then she dies as well. And this whole process is probably about a 2 month lifespan. So once she's in there, it is a little more technical than she just goes in there and she lays her eggs. So once she gets into the chamber, she ejects the flower with a chemical that transforms the flower into the fat structure called the gall. And she also sheds the pollen she carried in her pouch. And that's not her primary goal, but it's vital that she fertilizes the fig, because if she doesn't, then the fig will abort the fruit and she will lose all her young. And the pollen is carried in the specialized pocket and it's located above the abdomen. And after the queen has laid her egg, she does die and is digested by the fig for nourishment. The short lifespan of these wasps ensure that the figs are being produced the entire year in the rainforest. And this is vital, especially in season of drought in the rainforest, because even if there's drought, these figs will keep going because of the wasp and their ability to pollinate the figs and make them grow. And so during times of drought, these fig trees will be basically epicenters for a ton of different organisms. You have the wasps, obviously, and then you have bats, birds, monkeys, all kinds of different things all around these figs, because that's where life is existing more so than any other because of the drought. Some wasp species actually pollinate the flowers actively, while most insects pollinate it passively. And figs with the passive pollinators make about 30% male flowers, and those that are active pollinators go to about 10%. And so the figs and the fig wasp have been co-evolving for about 90 million years. So this is a very intimate relationship between the two, and they have diversified hand in hand together, and it's a very, very intimate relationship between these two. So pollen is vital in this relationship between the fig and the wasp. And basically all you need to know is that if the wasp, when she laid her young, didn't pollinate the fig, then the fig aborted the fruit. And that, I mean, obviously if that happens, then the young that were laid don't hatch, and basically everything the female ever did is irrelevant because she didn't pollinate. But if she does pollinate, then the fruit will be kept and her young will grow and they will live out their life cycle like we've talked about before. There is some debate on the ratio of fig to wasp pollination, and so older studies suggested that only one wasp species was specifically pollinating one fig species, and that's not the case. The relationship is intimate. There have been recent studies where it shows that it may be as little as 2 different wasp species to one fig species, but it's not 1-to-1. And that was an older debate that has been revealed to be untrue with better genetic data and sampling. The female reproductive rates, the females produce up to 95% females in each reproductive cycle, and so all the reproduction takes place inside the fig, which is important to note. And the females there compete with each other to reproduce with their sisters. This is a very bottleneck genetic pool, and it's very brother-sister related. And the competition between the brothers reduces the fitness benefit of producing sons relative to daughters, and hence that's selected for a female by a sex ratio. And you don't really need a lot of males to be produced to begin with. The females that can do the job of reproducing with the female and digging the tunnel just fine. And so the more of a ratio you have towards a female population, that's more females that get out into the open and can spread their genes. And you just don't need a lot of males. There's not a benefit to having a large amount of males. This is just a nice overview slide that encapsulates basically everything we've been talking about this whole time. And I thought it was just a really good diagram, and it really, you could sit here and read this over and over and understand it completely. It's a very solid diagram. There is some exploitation as well of these figs, and this symbiosis is exploited by many species of fig parasitic wasps, and most of them don't enter the syconium or contribute to pollination, but they use their long ovipositor to inject their eggs through the fig wall And so they don't even have to go into the fig. They can just inject this and insert their young through that and basically piggyback off the other wasps that go in and do the pollination. And the ovipositor is pretty long. It's 7 to 8 millimeters, and it's 15 micrometers in width. And the ovipositor of the fig wasp is equipped with a sharp zinc-coated tip. And so these guys really piggyback off the ones that actually go in and do the pollination and reproduction from the inside. There's also deception on the part of the fig. So female fig flowers can attract wasps by mimicking the scent of the male flowers. And the fig trees are deceiving the wasp, and the reproductive goals of the fig tree are met, but the wasp reproductive goals are not. And a female wasp cannot lay its eggs in a female flower. So when it enters, it commits reproductive suicide. Once it goes in and it's a female, there's no way for them to get back out because they've lost their wings going in. But the female flower still gets pollinated and goes on to reproduce its seeds. But the wasp is out of luck on this one. And so a good question to ask is, why do the wasps continue to pollinate the female figs? And the wasps are so inbred because they're mating with their brothers and sisters, they don't really lose their lineage. Like one specific wasp may lose his genes, but overall, since they're so closely related to begin with, that even if one specific wasp loses his genes, overall, he's still carrying on, or she's still carrying on her line because they're so closely related from birth because of inbreeding. And this means there's not much evolutionary pressure on the wasp to fight back or abandon the dioecious host. And while the figs do this deception, it's really not helping them a lot. The dioecious plants have not outcompeted the honest monoecious ones. And the fact that both the monoecious and dioecious exist could mean that at any point in time, one strategy is not more advantageous than the other. This slide is a little bit off topic, but I thought it was pretty cool. So figs have been discovered around 11,500 years ago, and it was thought that maybe they were the first commercially cultivated fruit. And so just a little cool tidbit there, nothing really to do with what we were talking about, just I thought it was cool, so I added it. And this video is basically, it's a really good summary of everything we've talked about, and you can actually see what we've been talking about instead of just looking at a slide. And so I added it, and that's the end of this presentation. So thank you so much.